It's go time.
Welcome to Quick Kicks here on Third Down Gamble, with your host Don Charbin, with special guest Howie Mooney of the Sports Lunatics podcast and author of 5 books including An Unlikely Story.
To Howie Mooney, it's fantastic to see you here. It's really great that you're able to help out, as my partner has decided to take in a little bit of football out east, which is great for him. And I hope Heath is having a great time. Obviously, he did see his Winnipeg Blue Bombers win on Sunday night. Right away, we've got stories to talk about from that. And Howie, what's your take on the situation with Bo Levi Mitchell and the Hamilton Tiger Cats?
Anytime you see an injury like that, it's sad. You hate to see it. Unfortunately, football is a brutal game, and we see it in veteran guys as they get into their 60s and 70s, and the toll that it takes on their bodies, and later in life. But, you hate to see somebody have to leave a game and have to leave a game for a period of time. Hopefully it's only a few weeks for Bo Levi Mitchell, but, you hate to see that at any time, especially as when we're young, we don't really realize what we do and what we see. But now that we're older and we've all played sports for a while, we've all dealt with certain injuries at different times. You hate to see it. You just hate to see it.
Couldn't agree with you more. At 36, relatively, he's still young. But given the punishment on his body, the fact that he's broken an ankle before, and of course he had that shoulder injury coming out of Calgary.
Yeah,
I do wonder if, until I saw his tweet this morning, I was beginning to wonder if this was the end of the road for Bo. But I'm guessing that the break was in the ankle, or the dislocation was just the ankle, which means he can come back from that, rather than I was scared that it could have been another Chad Kelly fibia and tibia.
But if it is a dislocation of the ankle, say, that still could be a devastating injury as well. I worked with a guy who played junior football with the Ottawa Sooners, and he had his foot basically taken off his leg while playing football. And he said, this is a time in his 30s at the time. He said, I still have to look everywhere I'm stepping now to make sure that I'm not stepping into a hole or something like that. So it's something that carries on later in life as well.
You're exactly right. I've got a friend who's a neighbor here where I live, and he was playing soccer, and he caught himself on a sprinkler head and tore up his foot as well. And that left him always concerned about what happens next if he ever does it again. Though those types of things, yes, they will perpetrate forever. But if it's just a clean break, then
yes,
Bo is probably very fortunate.
Yes, if it is a clean break. I mean, we've seen people suffer spiral fractures of their femur or something like that, and it's devastating. Spiral fractures, especially because the bone just disintegrates in the leg. Mickey Mantle, by the way, tore up his leg on a sprinkler head while giving way to Joe DiMaggio, late in Joe DiMaggio's career, very early in Mickey Mantle's career. Same thing happened to him.
Yes, and for Mickey, I mean, that was a lot of pain that he went through. And of course, the medical techniques at the time are nothing what they're compared to now.
It's true. I was talking with a friend a couple of weeks ago talking about knee injuries. And you think about people like Bobby Orr and guys who tore up their knees back in those days. There was no simple arthroscopic knee surgery. They basically tear your kneecap off and work on the tendons inside, put the kneecap back on, and then sew everything back up. And kind of gruesome when you think about it.
Yeah, it is. And I know that shortened his career immensely with all of that. And
oh, yeah.
Had he been a player in the 2000s, would have been far different for him. Probably would have had a 15-year career easily. Yeah, that was one of the things. And he's sort of the poster child in that sense of where medical technology, medical techniques have improved so much.
Absolutely.
Going forward, though, for the Hamilton Tiger Cats, we saw them in that football game on Sunday night where they tried Trey Ford, Jake Dolegala. It just didn't seem to generate much in their offense. Now, the Ticats, of course, were in shock right after the incident because Trey Vauvel gets a big punt return. The very next play, the Bombers score a touchdown. You know that they're in shock at that moment.
Yeah.
It's very unfortunate that those events occurred. Had it happened on first down, then maybe they could have buffered it a little bit. The Bombers, they're not going to sit back and feel sorry for you. They know what it meant. Jake Ceresna, though, I was a little bit surprised that he did his big roll after the fact because he probably heard something give in that leg, and I wouldn't be celebrating.
It's hard to say. It's really hard to say when you're not right there in the moment. And so I would hesitate to judge at this point. A guy goes down, he's hurt. I mean, I was a goalie for 40 plus years until I had my hips replaced. I remember having a guy roll on my leg. I got a high ankle sprain from it, and he wouldn't get off. And I'm yelling at him to get off my leg, and he's not getting off. I'm not saying that players go out to hurt important players on the other team.
No, I'm not accusing Ceresna of doing that at all. But
no, and I know you're not.
It looked to me like one of those things that the NFL calls a hip drop tackle,
right?
Which they're trying to ban, and that's basically you grab the person around the hip, you use the force of your weight to bring them down, and what's typically underneath the player's leg that you're tackling.
Well, remember Joe Theismann?
Lawrence Taylor hit.
Yes,
and those types of fractures do happen. Looking at what's going to happen for the Hamilton Tiger Cats going forward, do they have to settle on Ford or Dolegala? And what are their fortunes like in the interim? Because if Bo is back in 8 weeks, they've still got an outside shot. But if he's not back this season, figure out who's going to be their leader.
We've seen Trey Ford in the past be successful. We've seen him win games. Just by 30,000 foot view, Trey Ford seems to me like a guy who can succeed when he gets regular reps, when he knows he's going to be starting. Coming off the bench is a different thing. Felt it as a goalie before. You come off the bench, it's not the same as when you know you're starting and you know you're going to be starting regularly. And I had this discussion this morning with a Toronto Argonauts fan on Twitter, a good friend. He took the opposing view that over the past 5 years, he says he hasn't seen Trey Ford progress like a guy should. Personally, I think if Trey Ford knows he's the number one guy, and if he knows he's going to be in there for a period of time, I think he can respond positively. Now, it may take him a game or two to get into that rhythm. I mean, I'm hoping for Trey Ford as a human being and as an individual that he's able to get it going quickly. If not, there are plenty of guys who want to come and play in the CFL.
That's true. And if you're the Hamilton Tiger Cats and you're looking at this situation, you have Taylor Powell now in Edmonton. You kind of gave up on him in a way. And if you're rolling back the clock, do you sort of wish he could undo that decision to let him go? I kind of think you're right about Trey Ford. His upside is great. But the one thing that Scott Milanovich is going to have a lot of trouble with, and you know this is going to happen, is when Trey goes off script, when he starts to ad lib out there. Scott doesn't care for that at all. And even in the game, we saw he got benched right after he scrambled around and basically tried to do a little dump pass. He wants him to make his reads. And this was the complaint in Edmonton: make your reads and get rid of the football. Don't go dancing all over the field.
That's fair. That's completely fair. And I mean, I think every coach, especially when they've been a quarterback themselves, that's what they want. That disciplined, read the progressions and find your receiver and find them ASAP. Don't try to decide in your head what you're doing in the middle of the play because you don't have time. There's just milliseconds out there. So you've got to find the guy that's going to be open. Hope that the receiver makes the right cut, that he's going to do what you think he's going to do. Because last night when Ford threw that interception, I felt like that was what happened. I don't know. I mean, it's hard to be in somebody's head. As for him as an individual and for him as a human being, I hope that he's able to succeed as soon as he possibly can.
And then, of course, there's Jake Dolegala. He's got an arm on him.
Yes.
He played some time with the Saskatchewan Roughriders, was a starter with the Roughriders. Is this his time to shine? It was great to see that we had two U Sport quarterbacks going at it. Taylor Algersma, who actually acquitted himself reasonably well, but I think the Bombers really curtailed what they were doing out there.
I thought so too.
And said, by the way, Brady Oliveira, it's your time now.
Yes. Algersma did what you were talking about earlier. Simple, keep it simple, dish off, and not try to do too much freelancing out there. And he did enough to help Winnipeg win the game. And I think they said at the end of that game that it was the first time they'd progressed to the red zone. They didn't make it look too difficult on that last drive either.
Well, it was akin to what the Rough Riders did to Ottawa a couple of nights before where they brought out Tommy Stevens.
Yes.
Just went left, right, and Ottawa didn't have an answer for him. And the Riders just ran out the clock. It was textbook what you need to do to win a football game. That huge third down gamble for Ottawa that failed set this all up.
Of course it did. Of course it did. And sitting here in Ottawa as we speak, it's been a difficult beginning of the season. Last year was a really difficult season to watch. The Red Blacks dig themselves into a deep hole early and then not be able to dig themselves out. This weekend against Saskatchewan, they got a lead. And it was the first time in 4 games that they had a lead, which I said that to somebody. I said, how about those Red Blacks when they scored the game's first touchdown? And a friend of mine messaged me on Twitter and said, they're going to lose. And I said, it's the first time they've had a lead all year. The fact that Ottawa is the way they are, they need some wins to get fans back in the building. When I was at the Toronto game, I think there were 13,000 fans. My seats are in the north side stands. The south side stands, that's where the cameras are shooting from. The south side stands were basically empty. Now, I know a lot of the people will go up the top of the first level and party, and they'll watch the game from there. To see, I still call it Lansdowne Park, TD Place, that empty. It was sad. And now they're digging up they're making the new arena in the back of the east end zone. So it almost looks like a construction zone back there. It's not the same feeling this year and last year as well as it's been in previous years.
Yeah, Ottawa with Ryan Dinwiddie there, I guess the hope was there'd be some sort of immediate return on the investment. He's got a problem in that quarterback room. He immediately, once Drew Brown found out that he wasn't going to be the starter, said, get me out of here. If you can cut me or whatever, I'm gone. And that started the ball rolling. Jake Mayer, who I would say reminds me of Matt Nickel. He's kind of a serviceable quarterback. He doesn't do anything spectacular, but he doesn't.
That's a good word. That's a charitable word, I think.
He's the type of guy that will do what he's supposed to do. He won't flash. He won't give you that buzz or that excitement. For Ryan Dinwiddie, he's got to be looking at this and going, what am I left with here?
What have I gotten myself into?
True. And he's got a lot of work to do to fix it. He's got to go out and maybe I'm not wanting to pick on Jake Mayer completely. The question was brought to me a little while ago. If you were going to pick a starting quarterback that you wanted to ride with to the Grey Cup, who would it be? And Mayer wasn't on that list.
Oh, of course. Yeah, of course not. But I'm wondering if McLeod Bethel Thompson has anything left in him that can resemble the McLeod Bethel Thompson that won Grey Cups in Toronto.
If he has Karfala Exame playing defense, then he's got a chance. Because he torched him in Regina last year.
Yes. I lived in Toronto until last year, retired last year, moved back to Ottawa, where I grew up. I saw McLeod Bethel Thompson play numerous times. And I think that there are days where he can just be lights out. And then there are days where he can be lights out. I mean, out. The other version of lights out. And especially at this age now, at this time in his life, how much does he have left in the tank? That's my question.
Exactly. And that's anybody that trips over 35. That you're always asking that, whether you're Trevor Harris, Zach Collaros, who was also knocked out of the game.
Yes.
Hamilton, and we don't know what that status is. Is it going to be a situation where maybe he has some repercussions from a head injury that bother him going forward? Is it Drew Brown or Taylor Elwickersman? We'll find out soon enough for Winnipeg. In Ottawa, I know going and anything right now is just the worst thing possible. That fan base wants to cheer for something. They want to get out there. They're still enthused. I just don't see how it's going to be Jake Mayer taking you to the promised land. If you're Ryan Dinwiddie, do you ever cut bait and say, okay, we just got to blow this up and start over again?
That would be a question for Burke and for anybody who's crunching numbers in terms of a salary cap. What is that going to mean? It's really, really difficult to say. I look at the team right now, and I look at the teams going into this past week, into week 5. Ottawa was 0-3. BC was 0-3. You look at those two teams, and BC looks like it's light years ahead of where Ottawa was or is. BC looked great in their win against Edmonton the other night. Ottawa's got such a long way to go just to get to where BC was after 3 or 4 weeks or 3 games. I fear, I've got my tickets sitting right here on my little table, that I'm not going to have a lot of joy. The most fun part of going to Red Blacks games this year is going to be the pre-drinking at the bars nearby. That's probably going to be and post having tacos on a patio somewhere.
Yeah, which is unfortunate because I look at the talent pool on that football team.
Yes,
it's there. They've stocked it well. They just need somebody that they can get their arms wrapped around and say, "You're going to take us. Let's go."
I look at Greg Bell and I was expecting more from him. Somebody said to me, well, the offensive line is not that great. Well, Daniel Adeboboye is able to be productive when he has the ball. I think Greg Bell is a better back, or I thought Greg Bell was a better back than Daniel Adeboboye. But Daniel Adeboboye has been productive. He was productive in Toronto. He was productive. He's been productive last year and this year as well. And you look at the numbers, you look at the stats, you look at the receivers, the guys who've been targeted, like Geno Lewis going into week 4 had been targeted, I think 15 times and made 6 catches. You can't be throwing to Justin Hardy all the time. It's just not feasible. There are a million directions I could go on this Ottawa football team, and none of them are pleasant.
Again, when you're 0-4, it usually feels like it's desperation time. Even in the new playoff structure that may be coming in 2027, you're still at the bottom outside looking up at what's going on inside. You have to get out of that. The Red Blacks, to me, I don't understand it sometimes because they've got a coach that can win. They've got an offensive line that's decent. They've got a running back that's decent. They've got receivers that are great. They've got a defensive line that's good. They've got, what are they missing other than the guy that's standing in the huddle, looking at his flip card and going, this is what we're going to do.
You said it. You said it. You said it. I trust Dinwiddie to understand what he wants and needs from his team. They were saying that he was upset after the game with the team's, I guess, quote unquote, lack of intelligence on certain plays. If the punter tackles or pushes the guy out of bounds on that run back, we may have a totally different outcome. That's football though. Football, 5 plays in a game decide the whole thing. If you're on the right side of those 5 plays, you win the game. And that's just not just me saying that. That's everybody knows that. And so Ottawa came out of the wrong end on the wrong 5 plays. They did not win the game.
The Red Blacks, yes, the punter on the play just whiffed at him. All he had to do was stand in his way, anything to obstruct him.
Yes.
And he was probably going to get him to step out of bounds or do something.
Exactly.
Oh, I got to make it look good on film. And that was it.
And it didn't even look good.
I love the commentary from Luke Wilson after that, when he said, how do you go back to the locker room after that play? How do you face your peers?
Well, his whole commentary on kickers that game was quite entertaining.
It was, but his bias aside.
Yeah, I know.
I still think that he's spot on because when you whiff like that, when you just don't put in any effort to prevent a touchdown, how do you go back and face anybody? What are you going to say to them? Sorry? You've got to be there. You got to be accountable. They're depending on you. You're on the field. You're one of the 12 that's to prevent this.
I can remember a time in the CFL when there were 32-man rosters. Everybody played, not everybody, but a lot of guys played 2 ways, and either on special teams and offense or offense and defense or special teams and defense. And I can remember a guy who recently died, Billy Van Berklio, who was the backup quarterback to Russ Jackson, and he was the team's punter as well. I can't see him ever allowing something like that to go by him.
Grandson of Al Ford, Jackson Ford, makes a big play on the 3rd down gamble. And Al Ford, of course, was the punter with the Saskatchewan Roughriders back in the day. and also did a lot of work on offense. There was always this expectation. Jack Abenshan was an offensive lineman and their place kicker.
Yes, he was.
This multi-role approach that went on.
Well, Jerry Keeling was a quarterback and a defensive back.
Yeah, and wasn't Joe Zuger a quarterback and a punter?
Yes. Yes.
It seemed to be the way it was. I remember Ronnie Lancaster started his career in Ottawa.
Yes, he did.
And he wasn't going to unseat Russ Jackson, so he played defensive back and quarterback.
Well, Frank Clare was the coach at that time when in Ottawa, when they had the two quarterbacks, Jackson and Lancaster. And I think he said he was the first one that I can remember hearing say, when you've got two good quarterbacks, you got no good quarterbacks, that he had to let one go. And so he traded Lancaster basically as far as he could away. And that was to Saskatchewan. And both men became legends.
Yes, Lancaster, and they crossed paths, the Ottawa and Saskatchewan, a few times in the 60s. The two Rough Riders played in 66 and 69 in Grey Cups, and each quarterback, and then in 76. But of course, Lancaster was there, but it was some guy, I don't remember, Tony Gabriel in the end zone or something.
I'll tell Tony you said that.
And some number 2 threw it to him.
It's true. But when you had guys playing on both sides or two different sides of the ball, there was a toughness that existed in them that certainly didn't exist in Getman the other night.
When you're there for your team, you're going to lay out for your team. You're going to do everything for your team. That's part of being a team. That's what a good teammate does.
As I grew up and as I was around all the different sports, the guys in football seemed to have the most sense of camaraderie. I played hockey all my life. We didn't have that do anything for the guy next to you. We had it, but we didn't have it like it is in football, like it exists in football, like I saw with the guys I knew who played football. That feeling that it's almost like, and I don't know, I shouldn't even say it. I was going to say like being in a war, but it's not a war. It is football. That feeling though, that emotion of doing everything you can for the guy beside you and for the other guys around you, that always existed in football to me until I watched that game the other night.
Even Zach Collaros in those little CFL bites, he talks about that. This is a game, and that's why so many people have a tough time leaving it, is because of that bond. Mm-hmm. There's so much on the line every time you go out on the field, and that's a huge character bond that goes on between all of these people that sustains you through the season and the off season.
You can see it. You can see it when you see teams from 40 years ago reunite. It's like they've never been apart, and they'll sit down and they'll talk to each other. And that bond is unique to those guys alone. You can't come in as an outsider and be part of that group because you didn't experience all the things that they experienced. And I mean, I know that as a person who was in the media and as a person who was a fan. I mean, I can be friends with guys that played football, but I'll never be part of that circle like they had amongst themselves.
True.
And I look at the teams in the East. The biggest winner was the team that didn't play, Montreal, because all of the other Eastern teams lost. Nobody gained ground on them.
And the Alouettes, of course, got a chance to heal Davis Alexander, who...
Yes.
That's the number one watch thing that goes on with the league is where is he going to be at the end of the game? Is he going to be still on the field, or is he going to be limping on the field? Is he going to be limping on the sideline, or is he not going to be in the stadium? You want him to be healthy. Steve Daniel, who was on a podcast just prior to this one, we talked about this. One of the things that you've noticed in the CFL up until Sunday night was scoring was going through the roof. And Steve has pointed out correctly for years that when you have veteran quarterbacks who know this game and can excel at this game, scoring is going to go up because defense can't keep up with them. When scoring goes down, invariably it's tied to the backups having to fill time on the field. And that's exactly what happened. Granted, when the incident happened, the score was fairly low anyway in the Winnipeg-Hamilton game.
Yes.
You're going to expect now, especially if Hamilton is stuck with a change at quarterback, that their scoring is going to go down. But this is the thing. Like, we were very fortunate in the first 4 weeks that for the most part, the number one quarterback, the only reason they were not on the field is because the game was out of hand, not because of injury.
what was true about Davis Alexander is the same thing that's true of quarterbacks all over the league. You want them to be healthy. You want them to be able to show up week in and week out. And as long as that is consistent, now we've already lost at least one for a while, and hopefully Zach Collaros is going to be okay to play again in his next game.
And that's the wish for everybody. You want to beat the teams at their best with their best. When you're looking at players and time they get in training camps, and especially the backup quarterback, they talk about how CFL training camps are very short. You don't get a lot of reps. But I also point out too that during the week, you maybe get 3-4 days where you can actually practice, and the majority of the time is spent with the starting quarterback running the offense. When we're talking about Trey Ford or Jake Dolegala or Taylor Elgersma or Drew Brown or anybody that's having to fill in, McLeod Bethel-Thompson, they're not on the field touching the football much other than flipping it up and down. They're seeing what happens, but they're not participating anywhere near as much as a starter. So the wall to climb over is huge comparatively.
Yeah, it's true. That's where we see the biggest obstacle for a lot of these guys is just coming in cold.
You're exactly right.
Hi, this is Jamie Rydell from TSN, the producer, and you're listening to the Third Down Gamble.
I don't know if you've seen it, but I've stumbled onto a website called 3 Down Futures, and this was launched in May of this year, and they've had some interesting takes on things. And one of the things that they're talking about right now is this whole idea that the CFL may readdress the changes to the actual physical playing surface, where the end zones, the goalposts, and the length of the field between the end zones may still be under discussion. And I haven't heard any corroboration of this. I haven't seen any corroboration on this. I'm not saying that they're out there just putting out conjecture. Let's pretend, let's just say hypothetically that the CFL is still working through this. Because one of the things I did notice, and I've seen this especially in Regina, and it's probably true of many other sites, is that it's government that's paying for these changes. It's not the teams. So if you're going to be selling this to government, you better have something in it for them, whether it's civic or provincial, that makes sense. And if you're juggling with the field and they can't use it for high school football, for Pee Wee football, for junior football, for university football, it becomes a little bit of a headache for them. How do you sell this to your constituents? How do you make this palatable? And I wonder if the CFL, who were being bold, trying to push this forward, and they have every right to try it. Let's just say hypothetically, they've got enough pushback that they may have to look at this issue one more time. There's been, in the article that he wrote, there's been an idea that it's either the 55 or the 20-yard end zones are going to be up for grabs. So one or the other, not both anymore, which is very interesting, if that is anywhere near what they're discussing.
I've heard about the 55. I haven't heard about the distance or the size of the end zones. In those rumblings, because the rumblings have been coming out for a couple of weeks now, have they discussed the goalposts moving?
I don't think so. I think they're going anyway. That part of it is not changing.
My question and my concern is, as you said, with all of the other levels of football, going from kids to high school to university, are they going to have to change their fields too? And who's going to pay for that?
Well, I wonder if it's such a critical mass issue for anybody but, say, the junior and the university teams. Because so what if you play on a different field in a local park? That doesn't really change anything. A lot of times you're playing 6-player aside, 9-player aside. You're making all these accommodations anyway. So if the goalposts are on the goal line or if they're at the back of the end zone, I don't think it's going to impact them as much. The bigger players are obviously the junior, if you're playing in one of those stadiums, or especially the university, who Montreal has a football field in the university. Calgary is the same way, although the Dinosaurs are looking at building their own football field to get away from this.
Well, I think of it in Ottawa too. The Panda game is one of the biggest games of the year in the city between Ottawa University and Carleton. and it's played at Lansdowne Park at the TD Place. Are they going to change their game, to play on this different field, one game a year? And to me, it tells me that that Panda game is going to have to be played at either one of the two schools, alternating probably year after year.
That would be sad because that's such a huge event in Ottawa, that game.
It is.
I think everybody would be upset if that had to change because the goalpost. Now, one of the things you can do, obviously, you can drill a hole at the goal line and you can drill a hole at the back of the end zone and you can have the goalpost move back and forth. That's not impossible. Problem is covering that hole, especially the one on the goal line, making sure that it's safe and secure so that no one's sliding into it, under it,
or turning an ankle or losing a career,
which goes back to where we were initially talking.
Yes.
So you want to be very mindful of all of that and making sure that that works. The goalposts can move from the goal line to the back and then back to the goal line. The bigger thing is the 55 or 110 yard field. You can't monkey with that because then that monkeys with where the goalposts are going to be.
Yes, absolutely. Now, for me, I think the 55, and I said this as soon as we had this discussion on our Sports Lunatics show podcast, right after the announcement came out. To me, the 55 is Canada. When I'm looking at a football field, one of the first things I do is look at the center line on the football field and see if it's a 50 or a 55. And if I see a 55, there's a comfort that I feel. It's one of those things, remember, radically Canadian. 55 is one of those things that's inherently Canadian. And I hope that I'm never alive to see it change.
There's another practical application that has to be considered. And this is to do with especially Winnipeg, Saskatchewan, probably Calgary, maybe Edmonton. At least I'll talk about the Western teams, BC. If you shrink the field by 10 yards in the middle and 5 yards off each end zone, that's a 20-yard movement away from the end zones. Suddenly, those seats that were there are now far further away. They can't, in Regina, Winnipeg, Calgary, move them. They can't go with the field. They are going to be stuck there. So a few of them have put stages up, and that's fine. Calgary's been great at doing that. In Regina, they've got the pill zone, they call it.
Yep.
You can't bring that forward. And now suddenly they're going to be at least 10 yards further away from the back of the end zone.
Yes. When I heard the announcement originally last year, the first thing I thought of was they're making the entire field a smaller field so that it fits into American facilities because they want to expand. I mean, we saw what happened in the 90s, and I really, really do not want to see that happen again. I'd prefer to see expansion within Canada if we can do it. Although we've been talking about that since I was a kid, and that's a long time ago. But my first thought was their idea is to expand into American facilities into the States.
I won't argue that. I think they were looking at the UFL at that time and seeing if there was a franchise site that maybe would, as that league struggles to survive, maybe still viable in its own essence and could support. You're right. Other than Baltimore in the first iteration of the CFL America, the rest of them struggled mightily at the gate, where they had 80,000 seat stadiums and 15,000 people. Now the optics don't help. 15 on 30 is one thing, but 15 over 80 is quite a difference. And that's where the UFL has struggled.
Yeah.
The idea that going to the States, maybe there was some interest in it, and maybe it was being fueled by certain elements of the league, but I don't see it in the long run, especially with the climate that we're in. And I don't see how you justify the expenses too, because most likely then you're going to have to start paying in American dollars, and that's going to exponentiate your costs.
And also the roster configurations as well, because in the States they would be all American players as opposed to Americans and Canadians,
which was the case back then. Now the Canadians live with the quota, as it were, and the American teams didn't. Baltimore took advantage. They did win a Grey Cup in 1995, second year in the league. But Don Matthews was also a genius as well.
Sure he was.
Just looking at this, though, let's continue this hypothetical.
Yes.
If you're going to make a choice, which would you rather have, 20-yard end zones or the 55-yard line?
55-yard line. Because to me, that's Canadian football. We've shortened the end zones before from 25 to 20, 20 to 15. Yes, we'll deal with it, I guess. I don't have as much of an issue with that as I would shortening the field to 100 yards. I would be easier with the smaller end zones. Yes, we had a touchdown this week. The guy caught the ball deeper in the end zone, and it would not be a touchdown in the smaller end zones. But most of the time, it's guys crossing the goal line with the ball that accounts for a touchdown as opposed to a pass deep in the end zone.
Well, we also saw in Kelowna where passes were being thrown to the corner, and of course it's shaved and the ball was going out of bounds. To live with the footprint that you have, that's the point I think you're trying to make.
Well, I think too, when colleges, universities, high schools have running tracks, and a lot of them do, and their football field is in the middle of the running track, the end zones are shaved in the corners anyway. Because just for safety, and I can remember our high school, they tried the end zones they tried squaring the end zones onto the running track. And you make that step off the field onto the cinder track, and it's like you're ready to kill yourself.
I've never had to have that experience. I've always played in shaved corners if the track was there.
Yeah.
It was just part of life. We never thought much about it.
Well, how many times do you remember seeing somebody at BC Place with the cleats go from the turf onto the cement and just basically
skate?
Yes.
And that is, to me, more dangerous than anything, because
that's frightening.
Those guys are basically out of control, and there's a wall, padded, granted, but there's a wall coming up to greet them. If you shrink something, you're going to be 5 yards further away from that, which would help. If it's one or the other, I'm kind of with you. I think I could live with a shorter end zone more so than I could live with no 55.
Right. Well, we're already seeing the effects of the clock change this year. All these little changes, I understand it's to attract a younger audience. Having a ticket package, I sit in the stands at TD Place and I look around and I see a lot of bald heads like mine and a lot of white hair. And I do see some younger people, and I'm glad for that, because the league needs the younger audience, and they need to be able to be attractive to a group that's going to perpetuate itself as time goes by.
The one thing, though, and I've heard this many a time, is they're worried about the consuming audience being too old. Like they're in their 50s, maybe whatever, their 60s. But one thing to keep in mind is they're making new 55 and 60-year-olds all the time.
That's true. Well, that's true of every sport, though.
Well, even the NFL, their average age of their audience in the stands is going up, up, up.
And you look at baseball television audiences, the average age is 55, 57. They aren't having any issues.
It's sort of like what you want to do is you want to indoctrinate people young into the game. And then they go out in life and they have to raise a family and do that. But then when they are done, they're starting to get to the point where they have some free time and some capital to spend. You hope that you've done enough when they were young to ignite a fire that say, I want to go back and do that again. I want to see those games.
And I want my kid to come with me too.
Exactly.
I mean, that's what I did with my son when he was young. We're talking about, he was 12, I think, when the Red Blacks came back in 2014. And we drove from the GTA to be here for the inaugural game. It was a bunch of wonderful things happened that day and that evening. We ended up down on the field with James Duthie, and I knew Jamie. I've known Jamie for years, and we ended up down getting our picture taken with James Duthie at the TSN desk, and my son was just over the moon with that, and he's been a CFL fan ever since. That's a one lucky case, though, and I mean, not everybody's going to have that opportunity.
But you never know with a child what it is that's going to excite them.
You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right.
And I grew up in an area where, I mean, just the nature of the beast, we were 4.5 hours to the nearest stadium.
Wow.
So I wasn't until I was 21 when I finally got to a professional game.
When I was a kid, my brother and I were kids. We were a year apart in age. Early 70s, the Royal Bank had this program where if you were of a certain age, and we were of that age, if you opened up an account with them, you could get season tickets in the East End Zone, which was basically just benches at that time at Lansdowne Park, for $5. It would be 50 cents a game because there were 2 exhibition games and 8 regular season games at that time. So for $5, my brother and I were season ticket holders, and we were 11 and 12. We thought we were kings. We thought we had the life by the tail with that. My grandfather was a season ticket holder in the North Side stands. And then when the South Side stands were built, my uncle was a season ticket holder there. So my brother and I were able to join them, and we felt like we were rich, even though we were just idiot kids. But they didn't have the net back of the goalposts back then, so that the ball could just go into the seats. A fun time. It was something that made my brother and me fans for life. I mean, I ended up covering the team for a period of time in the 90s for television. My brother still works for the team doing stats on game days. You know, that's where we are now.
Amar Daman in BC is doing wonderful things to reconnect with the youth of that area and also the fandom in that area.
Yes.
He's right in saying that when you go around downtown Vancouver, you see a lot of orange and black. It is significant.
That's changed a lot because I remember living in Vancouver in 2002, 2003, and you had to pull teeth to get people to go see a BC Lions game back then.
He's doing the right things. He's making it an event. He's making it fun to be there. And of course, he's got Nathan Rourke, which doesn't hurt.
That's true.
The BC Lions, it's a fun game to attend. I've been out there. It's great. You cannot not get excited when you walk near that stadium because it is a hub of activity all around it.
I'm really, really happy to hear that because when I was there, it was not that way.
That was a different time, a different set of owners.
Yep.
And different attitudes too. Now they realize that they're in a big marketplace. And I give credit to the league itself. It's trying to develop itself in this bigger marketplace, trying to carve out its niche. Where before it was, well, we'll announce the game is on Saturday. Everyone will just show up. Well, that doesn't work anymore. You got to bring them along and say, hey, this is the reason. Yes, there's a football game, but you also can participate in this prize package. You can do this, you can do that, and get everybody enthused. And I do admit at Mosaic Stadium, which is the stadium I go to,
yes,
there's tons of stuff going on during the game. There's never a dull moment. And I give the Rough Riders in the CFL a lot of credit for this.
I got to say, you folks out west with your 50-50s, it's unreal.
Oh, yeah.
It is unreal. I point that out whenever I'm with anybody watching a CFL game. We always look at the 50-50 when the games are in Saskatchewan or Alberta, because it's just crazy.
Labor Day in Saskatchewan, it goes through the roof. Absolutely through the roof.
Talking about Labor Day in Saskatchewan and the Banjo Bowl, I one chapter in my latest book, which is called Fallen Angels, which just was posted on Amazon last week. The last chapter of the book, it's almost like an amuse-bouche, but it's a story of how the Banjo Bowl came to be.
Troy Rustwood.
Yes, exactly.
A bunch of banjo-picking inbreds is how we refer to Saskatchewan.
The reason that always stayed in his head was because when he was sitting in Vancouver with Bob Cameron, they were having breakfast before playing the Lions. And one of the Vancouver columnists referred to people in Winnipeg as banjo-picking inbreds.
Oh.
And it always stayed in his head. Anyway, I don't want to give away the story. It's in my latest book, Fallen Angels, and you can get it on Amazon.
Excellent. Nice teaser.
Third down.
As we look at the games upcoming, Ottawa, Edmonton's 5.5-point favorites. The Elks struggled in BC. They gave up a lot of turnovers. Things just unraveled for them.
Yes.
They're not going to do that twice. And especially against an Ottawa team that seems to be spinning its wheels right now. Edmonton really wants to make some noise. And this is one way to do it, is to take care of business with the Red Blacks.
I think it's going to be closer than maybe you think. I still think Edmonton's going to cover, but I don't think it's going to be the runaway. I don't think that Ottawa's going to look as bad as they did in the first game of the season against Edmonton, and they did look bad in that game as well. But I think that with the second half they had against Montreal, and then the first half they had this past week against Saskatchewan, I think there's a team in there that is functional and that can make things work. Whether they can stay with these Edmonton Elks, whether they can stay with with Edmonton for 60 minutes, that's another story. I do think that Edmonton will cover that 5.5.
Cody Fajardo did not look great, especially in the fourth quarter against BC, a team that really hadn't had a turnover all year, suddenly had a bucket full. And that last one that he threw to Darnell Sankey near the goal line, that was a quarterback misread. He should never have thrown that football. He's not going to let that happen twice. And Edmonton's defense is good. They are very good.
Experience tells me that you learn more from a defeat and from a loss and from a lack of success than you do from winning and success. And so I think Edmonton's going to go through the film in that game. They're going to slap themselves in the face, and they're going to come out guns a-blazing against Ottawa.
Ottawa is not going to get the bonus of having a kickoff go out of bounds, get the ball at the 50. Drew Brown finds Khalil Pimpleton across the middle, and then Lewis Ward, all in 8 seconds, kicks the game-winning field goal against Edmonton to pull one out. Two of those people aren't there.
No, you're right. To have that happen, period, is wild. And the fact that it happened the way that it did in that moment, it's probably one of the best case scenarios for Ottawa and the worst case scenarios for Edmonton in that moment.
Let's move on to Friday night and the Toronto Argonauts, who put up 36 points against the Calgary Stampeders. It just wasn't enough. As Vernon Adams Jr. tied a Calgary record with 6 touchdown passes, ran for another himself. The record for the team personally involved in touchdowns is 8. Of course, who's got that? Doug Flutie, 6 tosses and 2 times he ran the ball in.
Mm-hmm.
But Vernon Adams Jr., that's the type of game that everybody wonders, when is that going to come out? And bam, he just unloaded. He couldn't miss against the Argonauts.
When he's on, he's amazing. And when he's not, it's not pretty. But he was on against the Argos, and he looked great. I was really happy because, I mean, of course, the Argos are in the same division as Ottawa, so they didn't get a step on them. But I was really happy to see, after the way that Toronto handled Ottawa in Ottawa a couple of weeks ago, I was really happy to see Toronto kind of get that treatment back.
Winnipeg's favored by 1.5 at this point in the week.
I still think Toronto's going to beat Winnipeg, though, by more than 1.5 in that game.
Oh, wow. So you're gonna say that Winnipeg can't cover. That's fascinating.
I'm thinking that because I don't know what the health status of Zach Collaros is right now.
That's my problem too. And of course, we're recording at a time when we just won't know.
That's right. We just don't know. And so I'm assuming that he won't be able to play. And if he's not able to play, then Toronto will cover.
For the Blue Bombers, it's the shortest of the short weeks you can have, a Sunday to Thursday contest.
Yes. It's not one of those best case scenarios.
So I'll put it to you this way. If Taylor Elgersma, Drew Brown start, I'm favoring the Argonauts to win that football game and beat the cover.
I agree. Yeah. That's the basis for my argument as well.
And we move to Saturday, where the Stampeders are in Montreal to take on the Alouettes. Of course, Stampeders put up 58. Suddenly they're world beaters. They are amazing to watch. And the Montreal Alouettes are going, we gave up a lot of points in this defense. We don't want to do that again.
Right.
They've not looked good so far, in spite of the fact that Noel Thorpe is supposed to be one of the best defensive minds out there, but the Alouettes defense has not looked great. And if Davis Alexander hasn't put up a lot of points with the offense, they're probably 0-1.
Football is a game of adjustment or adjustments. I do believe in Thorpe's ability to make changes as the season goes on, especially, but as the game goes on as well. And I don't know if he has the personnel on that defense to make it work the way that he wants to. I don't know if Calgary is going to be able to duplicate the performance they had last week in terms of scoring points.
That's a hard ask.
Of course.
Especially on the road.
Yes, and especially in Montreal. Now, for the fans of the Alouettes not being able to bring their boat horns anymore, it could have been interesting had they still been able to do that.
I kind of like Montreal at home and the cover of 3.5, but partly because for Vernon Adams Jr., that's going back to Montreal. He had some great moments there with Kahari Jones as his coach.
Yes, he did.
But he also had some very bitter moments there, especially when a certain quarterback that came over from Hamilton showed up.
Montreal could win by a field goal and then they don't cover. And so I look at this one I'm going to go with Montreal in this one.
I'm with you. The battle to me is going to be whether Vernon Adams Jr. stays hot and whether the Calgary defensive line can make some problems for Davis Alexander, because right now that defensive line in Calgary, I think, is the best in the league.
I don't disagree with you. And I'm really curious. I think it's going to be a low scoring game. I don't think that Calgary is going to be able to erupt for the number of points like they did last week.
Sunday, it's the Hamilton Tiger Cats without Bo Levi Mitchell taking on the Saskatchewan Roughriders, who just came off a win.
Mm-hmm.
Riders are 7.5 point favorites. This is getting into that rarefied era where Winnipeg sometimes were 13 and 14 point favorites in 2021. I like the Rough Riders at home, especially given that the Hamilton Tiger Cats, although Trey Ford, one of his biggest games ever was in Saskatchewan when he took out the Rough Riders when he was still a member of the Elks.
I still think it's a tall order for him to be asked to do that in this game coming up against Saskatchewan. Saskatchewan is the reigning Grey Cup champions, and they're that for a reason. 7.5 points against a depleted Hamilton Tiger Cats team. I think it's reasonable to assume that they will cover that.
I can't see a way forward for Hamilton in this football game unless Trevor Harris gets injured early and the Riders are playing their backup. But even with that, I think the Rough Riders defense is that strong. The home crowd will make a difference. The Riders, of course, smarting because the last time they were at home, Toronto came in and beat them in an exciting football game.
That result shocked me as well. I was shocked to see Toronto do that against Saskatchewan.
And I think Corey Mace has that on his radar, that we're not going to be a team that you can come in and beat in Regina. Without the quarterbacking of Bo Levi Mitchell, Hamilton's going to be in tough for a while. I just hope that, as Bo tweeted out, that he's going to be back as soon as possible, that it's going to do wonders for the Tiger Cats. But in the interim, the Tiger Cats, this whole business of finishing first may be out the window. Finishing second may be out the window. Finishing third is going to be the battle, especially if Ottawa ever finds a way to win.
They're 4 games in right now. He's going to be gone for 8 weeks. I don't know how many bye weeks they have in between, probably one at least. That's going to be another 7 games probably that he'll be out. Given that, Bo Levi Mitchell, his absence will be large in terms of not just this game coming up, but in the performance of the Hamilton Tiger Cats over the next 2 months.
I don't think there's enough on that defense to make up for it so that they can keep them in the football game. This is not the night that it's going to turn around for the Hamilton Tiger Cats. They are still at least a week away, Saskatchewan and the cover.
Yep.
Howie, thank you so much for being on the podcast and helping out. Talk about your podcast and your new book.
The Sports Lunatics Show is our podcast, our latest episode as we speak. We looked at the Sporting News, who celebrated their 140th anniversary recently. They put out a list of top 20 NHL teams of all time. I talked with Mick Kern of SiriusXM about who we agreed with on this list and who we didn't agree with on this list. We've covered numbers 20 to 11 so far, and we're going to do the second half at some point very soon. We just talk about a whole bunch of different things on the Sports Lunatics Show. My latest book is called Fallen Angels, and it is out on Amazon, but the book that it seems to be attracting the most attention even now is a book that I wrote last year about the 1981 Ottawa Rough Riders. They went 5-11, surprised Montreal in the Eastern semifinal. Montreal was favored in that game. They shocked the Hamilton Tiger Cats in the Eastern final. Pat Stokwa had a couple of touchdowns in that game, including one that was 102 yards, pass and run from J.C. Watts. The book, it goes into a lot of detail from before the season started, when the team was trying to woo J.C. Watts, through to the Grey Cup and beyond. The word that I'm getting from people, including football people, who I was concerned about, because I'm not necessarily a football guy. I didn't play football. My brother played football, but I played hockey and baseball. And so I was concerned about how the football guys would accept it. I've been kind of made an honorary member of the CFL Ottawa Alumni Association. I've been invited to their luncheons. The book has done really well. I woke up yesterday morning and checked Amazon, and it was a #1 bestseller in professional football. If you like football, if you like an underdog story, if you like a story of persistence and trying to figure things out on the fly, then get my book, An Unlikely Story, on Amazon. It's about how the 1981 Ottawa Rough Riders just missed a miracle. Of course, they went into the Grey Cup game down 22.5-point underdogs, came out of halftime leading 20-1 against Edmonton, and they lost 26-23 on a field goal by Dave Cutler with 3 seconds left in that game. Double interference, all that stuff, it's all in the book.
I got that as a birthday present from my wife. It's a great read. Thank you so much for being on the podcast. It's been great to talk to you, and let's do this again sometime.
Thanks for having me, Don. I appreciate you being thinking of me for having me on the show.
Third Down Gamble uses the expert resources of the Canadian Football League and 3 Down Nation. For up-to-date, insightful statistics and analysis, please visit cfl.ca and 3downnation.com. The CFL on CBC theme music is used with written permission from the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation.
Thank you for listening to our show. Third Down Gamble is hosted on Podbean. Follow us on Twitter, where our handle is @ThirdDownGamble. Join us again next time. The Third Down Gamble podcast. Audio worth watching.